friends. I'm your host, Erin Port, and welcome to the Simple Purposeful Living podcast. Life can be overwhelming and busy, so once a week, I invite you to join me, and together we will make simple tweaks to uncomplicate the hard parts of our life so we can spend more time doing what we love. Amy, I am so glad you're here. Welcome to the show.
Erin, thank you so much for having me. It is such a privilege to be with you and to share anything we can with your listeners.
Well, in the intro, I shared that one of my passions is parenting. My kids mean everything to me. I think there's this pressure as parents to get it right? And oftentimes we feel like we're not. So talk to us a little bit, introduce yourself. You call yourself a recovering yeller. Kind of share how you went from that to now being a parenting educator for more than 20 years.
Yes. So it's so funny when I look back on that, but kind of how this whole thing started. There were like two situations that just are forever ingrained in my mind. One was my son was like 3 years old. He was not having the nap, resisting the whole thing. And he came out of his room and I said, "You will sleep." Like that, like a crazy person, like an absolute. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, how am I going to make a kid sleep? That was one of the first like big yelling things. But the other one was a time when I had been yelling at my kids so much that day that my throat hurt. And I actually thought that I was getting sick because I had a sore throat. And I thought, oh my goodness, how did this happen? How did I become this mom? And these were like the sweetest little people in the world. And I love them, like you said, more than life itself. How was it that I was this big yelling mom? And I really felt like I was failing at my most important job. My job that I went to, that was easy, right? Compared to parenting. And so that was just sort of the moment that I was like, okay, like I can't keep doing this. These people deserve so much better. And that's what started my parenting education journey. And like once I got into it and just loved it so much and saw what a difference it made in my family, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So 25 years later, I'm still doing this. And I think I'll do it until, I'm on the other side.
Well, there's many more parents that still need your wisdom. So I'm glad that you are. And I told you before we hit record, I have 1,000,001 questions because I think there's so many different situations in parenting that you can kind of lean into some of the same root issues. And that's something I love about you is you don't just cover the symptoms or, okay, this is why, but you really say this might be why it's happening. And you even have this quiz on your website that I took. Tied 3 ways, so I don't know what that says about me. But you say it's important to know what kind of parent you are. Talk to us about why that matters.
Yeah, so this comes from the premise that, misbehavior is not just a kid problem, right? We play an equal role in that. And so much of that is sort of our gut responses, which in large part is driven by our personalities. And so we have parents go through what we call the parent personality assessment, and it helps them understand how their gut personality might invite certain behaviors. So for me, my personality is very controlling, very type A, and as a result, I tend to invite power struggles. Yours might invite helplessness. But the reason it's so important is first that awareness. You always talk about how important awareness is, right? Recognizing that we are playing a role in the behavior. And the great thing is once you realize how your personality, how your responses, your communication style is affecting your child's behavior, you can make some really simple changes. I always say like, we're 50% of the problem, and that's a great thing because we're 50% of the solution. If we can just tweak the way we're responding, we will see an absolute shift in their behavior. So it's really an exciting part of the formula.
I love that. And I love it really, when I took the quiz, it was, I think I was controlling by 1 point and then the other two like tied second place. But it was helpful because I'm like, yes, it is a power struggle. And it really made me, as I've been like thinking about what I learned in that quiz, how I'm interacting with my kids and how that does invite power struggles. And it kind of almost then allows me to say, this doesn't need to be a power struggle. It's not worth it, right?
Yes, and that's so important because especially for we type A controlling parents, like everything is important to us, right? And so we fall into a pattern of ordering, correcting, and directing, right? You need to, did you forget this? You need to do that. You need like ordering, correcting, and directing all day long because we want things done a certain way. But that totally invites power struggles from our kids because nobody wants to be bossed around all day. And so once you kind of are aware of those tendencies and you learn tools that are much more effective than ordering, correcting, and directing, it improves so much. It improves the relationship with your child, it improves their level of cooperation, and it just makes parenting so much easier.
So good. Okay, so let's just dive right into one of the top battles I hear from parents all the time, bedtime. First of all, we're all tired at the end of the day. Self-control is lagging, even in the adult among us. So, what would you talk about routines a lot, which I appreciate because I love a good routine. How does that help kid behavior? And how do we start implementing a routine, even if you're not a type A mom?
Yeah. So you mentioned bedtime, and it's so funny. I told you my yelling, like, you will sleep.
Yes.
And that's the funny thing about like bedtime and sleep. Like you can take the child to the bed, but you cannot make him sleep. It's the same thing with eating. It's the same thing with potty training. Some of these classic areas where we have huge power struggles, it's because the child has all the control. And so to your point, those situations can be made so much easier if we have a good routine in place. And so I like for all of our routines in the day, morning, after school, evenings, I like for them to be set up in what we call a when then format, right? So when the yucky, not so fun stuff is done, then we enjoy the fun parts of the routine. So at bedtime, that might look like when your pajamas are on, you have your bath, pajamas are on, teeth are brushed, clothes are picked out for the morning, all of those things are done. Then we'll do stories and snuggles until 8 p.m. But the reason that routine is so important for your child's behavior is number one, it's predictability, right? We all thrive in a predictable environment. It's the same every time. It also creates the expectation that we do the yucky stuff before the fun stuff. That's just a really good life lesson. And it takes the parent out of that ordering, correcting, and directing role. So you're not constantly telling them what they need to do next. The routine is there. It's in a visual format, which I know you recommend as well. And so even if the child is stalled in the routine, instead of saying, you really need to get your pajamas on, you can say, what comes next on the list? Right. And so having it be the same every night, I always say the routine becomes the boss, so you don't have to be. Again, it's one more area where we take ourselves out of that ordering, correcting, and directing, and that's going to reduce the power struggles.
Yes, I always am looking for ways as a parent to take myself out of the equation, right? Like letting them be in charge. And I see that with my kids. Like we have the same morning routine, right? Before school, choo, 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 all the same, and all I have to say is, has everything taken care of on your list? And they feel empowered to make those choices on their own. That's such a good reminder. Do you say, just to kind of clarify for those that have never had a bedtime routine, do you say like just a few things at the beginning, like brush your teeth and put on your pajamas, like, and then what, like, do you keep it pretty simple in the beginning and then add on, or what do you suggest?
Yes, and it depends on the age of your child and how much really needs to be done. So, some things can be done after dinner. Maybe it's, loading the backpack up, getting the lunch ready for the next day, your water bottle, all those things they need to do. That's kind of one mini routine. And then the bedtime routine, again, it just depends on what all needs to be done. But no matter what it is, I'd like for it to be in visual format, either words or pictures, depending on the age of your child. Always in a when then, when the yucky stuff is done, then the fun stuff. And, when we're just starting, if you're just starting a routine, I think keeping it as simple as possible is really best. The other thing too that's super helpful with routines is to kind of role play them ahead of time. So once you've worked with your child and what is our new routine, do the role play and actually go, beginning to end through it. But then I like to do what I call two-way role play, where you switch roles and you play the role of the child, and your child is the parent sort of directing you through it. So it's fun for them and it really helps solidify it in their mind when they actually practice it.
So good. And it's just a fun way to practice it, like you said. Good. And kids always like to be in charge. So it gives them a little bit of
Exactly.
that. Okay, I loved this that you said I'm a big encourager, a big in affirmation. But you said something that I thought was really interesting. And you said there is a difference between praise and encouragement. Can you explain that in a simple way and maybe give us an example so that we can be affirming our kids in the way that they need to hear it?
Yes. So there are a number of nuances with the difference between praise and encouragement. But most simply, if you could think of praise as focusing on the end product, the A, the goal you scored, that flawless, piano practice, whatever it is, it's the end product. Where encouragement focuses on the effort, the hard work, the extra study time, all of those times in the backyard practicing your left kick. Like it's the specific actions that the child can repeat in the future. So again, as an example, like, oh, you got an A, I'm so proud of you. Okay, like that's fine. But that does a couple of things. First, it sends a message to the kid that what we value is A's. And if chemistry is kicking his butt and he doesn't bring home an A, how is he going to feel? Are you not going to be proud of him anymore? Whereas if you say, wow, that extra study time, going to get help from the teacher, forming that study group, like staying in on Friday night and studying instead of going out with your friends, that really made a difference. Those are specific actions that they can repeat in the future to lead to a successful outcome. And so even if he brings home a B minus in chemistry, he knows he worked hard. He reached out for help. He can feel proud of his efforts and all of those things that we're encouraging around the academic stuff, those same behaviors and attitudes he can transfer to the sports, to the soccer field, to the football field, to his first job that he gets. So we just really want to be very specific about the actions that can be repeated. And I love your "you rock"
Yes.
post-it notes, right? And so that's such a great opportunity. Like you rock, and specifically, what were the things that the child did that they can repeat again and find success?
I think as a society, we focus so much on the outcome, but like you said, we can't always control the outcome, right? We can do our best and we can still fall short. I mean, I have a son who's in high school athletics. He didn't make the team that he wanted, and he did his best. He tried his best, and he still came up short. And that doesn't negate the effort that he put forth. And so I love that reminder to focus on what they can replicate again and the actions that they can take because we can't always control the outcome.
Exactly. And when you think about, in a family, you may have, children who have different learning abilities, right? And for one, bringing home A's is, that comes fairly easily. The other is, working like crazy and bringing home C's or, different abilities on the field. So again, focusing on the specific actions that they can repeat, no matter what the outcome, they can feel proud of their accomplishments.
So good. Such a good reminder and a way for us to practically encourage them and affirm them in their abilities. Okay. This is another one that I thought was really interesting. I went back to therapy about 2 years ago, and this is something that my therapist even talked about is that kids borrow our nervous system. What does that mean, and how does knowing that help us when we're talking with them and disciplining them and encouraging them?
Yeah. So I always ask parents to think about their energy. Like, how are you showing up? And so, a perfect place to think about this is in the morning, right? You're in the kitchen. What kind of energy are you bringing? Are you taskmaster? We got to get moving, got to get moving, pick up this, pick up that. Are you like that high energy chaos, taskmaster mom or dad? Or are you in the moment? Do you have a smile on your face? Is your voice calm? And how like the pace at which you speak, our kids will mirror that energy, right? And so if we can keep our nervous system calm, right, they're going to mirror that as well. But the minute we are amped up and go into taskmaster crazy mom mode, they're going to resist. They're going to get stressed. And so you'll see the same thing play out again and again. And so many of the things that we do in terms of the tools that we teach are about removing the chaos, right? Again, like you said earlier, removing the reminders that you have to do, taking yourself out of the equation so that when you show up, you don't have to manage and, manage everything. You can show up and be the calm, relaxed, easy mom with a calm voice and just have much more pleasant interactions and help keep your kids calm in this at the same time.
I remember when I was a teacher, I got this little tip from somebody, and they said, when you want to raise your voice, lower it to a whisper. And I would do it in the classroom all the time. Like when I wanted to raise my voice, I would, friends, we need, and it's crazy how they mirror that, just they bring it down. And so that's always stuck with me, that same idea.
Yeah, and even like in the morning, like if parents can practice this and they will see a difference. Like if you lower your voice just a bit and actually slow your speaking, right? Like just softer and slower. And it's like it allows you to just take a breath and recenter, but you'll also see your kids do the same thing. So it's kind of cool just to see that immediate result.
And they can do this tomorrow. That's a tweak that they can
Mhm.
take and apply, when their kids get off the bus this afternoon. Such a good reminder. Okay, you talk about how important it is for parents to apologize to their kids. And for a lot of us, that feels uncomfortable. We might not have grown up with that experience. Why does apologizing matter so much? And what does a healthy apology actually sound like to your kids?
Yes. Well, apologizing is important because it models how to take personal responsibility, right? We all want to raise kids who take personal responsibility. And so it models that. So the apology that I like to do is, first, I am so sorry for yelling at you earlier today. The second part is taking the personal responsibility. I was frustrated, but I let that out on you, and that's not okay. Now, notice I didn't say I was frustrated because you left your toys all over the floor, right? That's not personal responsibility, but I felt frustrated and I took that out on you, and that's not okay. The third part is what action are you going to take so that that doesn't happen in the future? So I'm really working on using my calm voice. And so the next time that I get frustrated, what I'm going to really try to do is go outside, take a deep breath, calm my body, calm my emotions before I come back and talk to you about it. Right? So I'm stating what I'm going to do. That models that we all mess up. And with that growth mindset, right, we can all do work to do better in the future. And then the fourth part, of course, is, can you forgive me?
Hmm.
And so I think just modeling that for our kids lets them know that it's safe to make mistakes. They will be forgiven. Our love and affection for them is not dependent on their performance, right? Like there's always space for grace and forgiveness. So it's just a good habit to get into not only with your kids, but with all the important people in your life. The other thing that I love to do is like, especially with this calm voice thing, it's so hard for so many parents. I like to bring the kids into the process and say, this is something I'm really working on and it's hard for me and I could really use your help. So if you hear me start to get like angry or frustrated, you hear my big mom voice coming out, give me a sign. So maybe they put their hands over their ears or over their heart or over their, like, give me a nonverbal signal to help me.
Mm.
Kids will feel so empowered by that. One, that you care enough to work on this, but number two, that they're part of the solution. And then, of course, when they do give you that high sign, whatever it is, like you have to really be like, oh my goodness, thank you so much for helping me with that. That is such a big help. So they'll feel really empowered by that process.
And I would think too, inviting that feedback is going to help them be okay with inviting feedback in their own life, right? I've been talking about that with my kids about the difference between discipline and sometimes just a little bit of feedback to help you on your journey. And that's different than discipline. And so just modeling that for them of like, I need that feedback so I can grow. We all need feedback. That's such a good reminder. Okay, so one of the things you talk about, a silver bullet tool, and I just love it. I implemented it and I don't do it perfectly, but it does make me more intentional, is you talk about mind, body, and soul time. Can you explain what it is and what happens as a result? And how does this work even with teens and larger families? I've got 4 kids. Can you talk us through it all?
Yes. So mind, body, and soul time. I'll give you the definition first, and then we'll talk about kind of how it works. So it is defined as time spent between one parent and one child, one adult and one child. Family time is important too, but this is one parent, one child. When we're fully present in mind, body, and soul, and this is important, doing what the child wants to do. So it's roughly 10 or 15 minutes. The reason it's so important is because for that 10 or 15 minutes, that child does not have to compete with anybody for your attention, not their siblings, not your mental to do list, not your partner. They have you completely to themselves for that 10 or 15 minutes. And again, you're fully present in mind, body, and soul, but you're doing something that they want to do because from the child's perspective, probably 90 to 95% of their day is dictated by somebody else. The parent, the teacher, the daycare provider, the coach, whatever it is. They have so little true agency and autonomy in their world. And so this is a time when they get to call the shots. It's doing something that they love to play or do. And what happens is spending that 10 or 15 minutes, first, it fills their attention bucket. It fills their power bucket because they get to call the shots on what we do. And we talked about the nervous system. That connection time really helps calm their central nervous system. And so, what you will see within a couple of days of implementing mind, body, and soul time, you will see greater cooperation, right? Your kids will just be more cooperative. Everything isn't such a battle. And for kids who have really big emotions and, kind of explosive outbursts, this really helps sort of, smooth out the edges a bit. So I recommend mind, body, and soul time once a day for each child. Now, you can incorporate that into things you're already doing. Oh, the one thing I didn't mention is we have to label it. So if you're already doing a tuck in routine, you label that as this is our special time, our mind, body, and soul time, daddy and Jason time, whatever it is. So you put a label on it so the child knows that this is their special time. Again, they're getting to call the shots on what activity they do and so forth. The other thing that you can do with a large family is bring everybody together and say, you know what, we're going to start doing this thing. I love having our family time, but I also want to have time with each of you during the day. So help me figure out how we can do this. So maybe you do one in the morning, you do one after school, one after dinner and one before bed. If you have younger kids, you can say, okay, can while I'm doing mind, body, and soul time with one of you, who's going to be kind of tending to playing with the younger one. So you bring them into the process so they're all part of the solution. And the more routine that you can make it when they know they're getting their time, that just gives them that sense of like, oh, okay, I'm going to get that one-on-one time with her. And it just, kids love it. Like it is the most powerful tool in the toolbox because it checks all the boxes, the attention, the emotional connection, the power, calming the central nervous system. It just is a power pack tool in so many areas.
And you said this investment, for a mom who might be thinking, I have a million things to do, but you say this minimal investment plays dividends on the rest of the day. And if we think about that, sometimes things that take time actually make us more time back, less power struggles, better relationship, all of those sorts of things. And I
Yeah.
think the tweak that I needed to make was A, naming it, being like, this is our special time, and B, allowing the kid the agency to choose. Because oftentimes I'd be like, hey, do you want to do this with me? But then that still puts me in charge. We're inviting the kid to say, okay, what do you want to do?
And I'm so glad you mentioned that about the time because that is the biggest hurdle, right? I don't have time. And I always tell parents, I guarantee you, you are spending more than 10 minutes per day on the fussing and the reminding and, the power struggles and the backtalk and all that stuff. You're already spending that time. What we're going to do is just spend that time proactively, filling their attention bucket, filling their power bucket. And as you said, you'll get that time back tenfold in good behavior.
And did I hear sometimes, and I'm kind of running ahead a little bit because we have some rapid fire ahead, but one of the things I'm going to ask you about is sibling squabbles.
Yeah.
And you said often that comes because kids want to know where their place is in the family. And so having that mind, body, and soul time and that secure time with mom, like I matter to her or to dad, that kind of helps nip some of those things in the bud too.
Absolutely. So much of sibling fighting is about competition for your attention.
Mm.
And so when we give kids the individual attention, they don't have to compete with each other for that. Now, they're still going to fight about other, little things, but that makes a huge dent in the jealousy, the competition, that kind of rivalry where it's competition for your attention.
So good. Okay, so I did tell you rapid fire, and I'm putting you on the spot because I know some of these aren't necessarily rapid fire, but I know these are things that parents deal with that they'd probably love a solution for. So we talked a little about sibling squabbles, but for those ones where they're kind of just off, when do you insert yourself and when do you let them figure it out themselves?
Yeah. The more you can let them figure it out themselves, the better, right? Because if we jump in every time, number one, we're giving them a huge hit of attention for that. And it sends the message that they can't work it out. So when you step in is when it is escalating. It's getting physical. The verbal stuff is just like more than feels okay for you. And the best way to jump in is, oh, wow. Oh, wow, with a big voice. It gets the attention on you and it's not putting blame on one of them, right? You're not fostering that victim and aggressor role. It's like, "Oh, wow, looks like we have a problem. Why don't we take some time, calm our bodies, calm our emotions, and then we'll come back together and solve this problem."
That's so good. You had me captured just when you said that. I was like, oh, I mean, it really worked in the podcast. I'm sure everybody that was listening too. And you talk about that. That's the next thing is you talk about instead of saying no, you say, oh, wow. So give us another example where you might use that.
Okay, so I love the "oh, wow" primarily for like the breaking up the siblings. But let me give you a couple of other things you can say instead of no. So anytime you can avoid saying no, we want to, but you can say, "Oh, wow, that sounds like a really fun idea. Would you like to do that on Saturday or would you like to do that on Sunday?" The other thing that you can say instead of no, like let's say they want to have, they want to stay up late, way past their bedtime, and you turn it into an "I bet you wish."
Mm.
I bet you wish you could stay up all night long. How fun would that be? If you could stay up all night long, what are all the things that you could do, right? You turn into an "I bet you wish." We're not saying no to that behavior, that's implied, but it takes it from being kind of a controversial thing to just something that's light and funny. And now we're talking about, okay, what are all the things that we're going to do if we stay up all night long?
I love that. Such a good reminder. Okay. How can we end nagging in 3 words?
Yes. So this strategy comes from Lynn Lott. She's co-author of the Positive Discipline series books, and her 3 words are asked and answered. And so once you've already had the discussion with the child, "I want to do X." Well, we can't do that because like you've had the discussion and they keep at it and they keep at it and they won't let up. You can say asked and answered. Basically, we've already discussed this. And again, it's a smile on my face. I'm not angry or anything, but asked and answered, we've already covered this and we can move on.
So good. Okay. What does backtalk signal? And do you
Mm.
have a tiny tweak to help?
Back talk is always a signal that we have an issue in the power bucket department.
Mm.
All right. All humans have a hardwired in their DNA need for power, control, agency. And as I said before, kids don't have a lot of control over their own world. So that back talk is typically an indication that we're holding all the power and the child is feeling powerless. It's an indication that we've been doing too much ordering, correcting, and directing. It's an indication that we have probably fallen off the mind, body, and soul time program, right? They're not getting their attention and power buckets filled in that way in that emotional connection. And it's an indication to us that our responses are probably escalating the power struggle. So here's a quick little one you can use. When the child is, negotiating the back talk, whatever it is, "Aaron, I love you too much to fight with you about this."
Mm,
Okay. "I love you too much. We're not going to get into an argument here. We can talk about this later, but I love you too much to fight about this."
that's a good one. That's helpful. Okay. You talked about potty training, bedtime, and eating are 3 areas where kids hold all the control. And I was like, yep, I've seen that play out in my life. What is a tiny tweak you have for picky eaters?
Mhm. Okay. The biggest change that we can make with picky eating is to stop talking about it,
Mm,
right? Because any parent who has a picky eater, you're very concerned about that. You are personally invested in that. And so there tends to be a lot of conversation around it. How do you know you won't like it if you don't try it? Just try one bite. Eat your peas before you get dessert. Like there's all this conversation around food, which sends the message to the child that, wow, she's really personally invested in this. And it's the perfect power opportunity for the child. They can dawdle through the meal. They can refuse to eat altogether. Now, there's a whole bunch of other strategies that we do in concert with stop talking about it. But if we just stop talking, serve the meal. If the child eats it, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine. But just stop talking about it. That will make a big difference because there has to be a sense of safety for the child around food. Like if we're constantly fussing about try this or try that, they're going to be less likely to try this or that.
That's so good. Such a good reminder. Okay, well, obviously, we just scraped the surface of everything that you've talked about. You obviously have programs. I mean, I binged your entire Instagram, so many practical tips in every single post. But tell them what you offer and where they can find it. And then I have two questions I ask every guest. But first, they're going to want to know all the details.
Yes. So if parents would like to learn more with us, I invite everyone to check out our course. It's called the All-in-One Parenting Success System. And in that, it's a video-based course. I teach you every tool in the toolbox. They're all super practical things you can implement that same day. It also has coaching support as well as expert series masterclasses on every topic that you can think of. And if you're not ready to jump into that right away, you can take a free class that we offer. And so I'm sure you'll provide the link. It's called How to Get Kids to Listen Without Nagging, Yelling, or Losing Control. It's for any type A parent, any parent who yells more than they want to, any parent who has strong-willed kids. That's our specialty. We specialize in strong-willed kids. So they can come to positiveparentingsolutions.com and learn more about that.
And that quiz that's on your website, we'll link that up in the show notes too. That was super valuable to me just to know what kind of parent I was and how I approach parenting. Okay, Amy, is there a tiny tweak you have made lately to make your life easier or lighter? And it doesn't have to do with parenting if you don't want it to be.
Actually, I do have a tweak, and I made this quite a while ago, but I want to share it with your listeners and viewers because I think it's so helpful. And that is changing just one little word. Instead of I have to, we change that to I get to, right? Because so often I have to take my kids to practice. I have to do this, I have to do that. But if you say out loud to your kids, I get to drive you to practice, right? I get to pick you up from carpool. That changes everything. It's a mindset shift for you more than anything else. It reminds you what a blessing this time of your life is, as hard as it is and chaotic and like overwhelming and all the things. But we do get to do those things. And I love to say them out loud, say that out loud to our kids because it just makes them feel so good.
That's so good. Such a good reminder. And oftentimes the tiniest tweak is really in our perspective or in our mindset, and it can make the biggest difference. Okay, and what is a tiny joy that you've enjoyed lately?
This is going to sound so silly, but I live in North Carolina, and last weekend we had a nice storm, and this weekend we had a snowstorm. Very rare. And my silly little joy was making soup. I made soup last weekend, soup this weekend. And the reason that's a joy is because just my life has been so busy lately, and I feel like I just haven't had time to like cook or do anything. So I had nothing else to do. So I got to do that, and it was just great.
My assistant lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and they got some snow. And I said, sometimes it's nice when life forces you to slow down and just be. And like you said, just the simple ritual of making soup is such a joy.
Yeah, it's not very sexy or exciting, but it was like just joyful for me.
But I think that's the whole point of life is oftentimes we think these joys are going to be all these accolades or whatever, and really it's the littlest things that bring such joy to our lives. So, Amy, this was a joy of mine. Oh my goodness, I'm going to take so many takeaways. I always say the podcast is just as much for me as my listeners. My mind is always exploding. But you are a wealth of knowledge. Keep doing what you're doing. You're making a difference for kids and families around the world, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
Erin, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the book that you've just written, which is going to be such a service to so many families. And thanks to your listeners and viewers for watching this.
If you liked this episode, it would mean so much if you'd share it with a friend or leave a quick rating and review so others can find our show. Until next time, you can find me at Simple Purposeful Living on Instagram and Facebook.